stand by for action.
Thanks for joining me. My name is Dave Milner. I am the Unpleasant Blind Guy, and I want to welcome you to part 2 of this episode of the Unpleasant Blind Guy on EDL Radio. Now remember, if you want to contact me with comments, questions, show suggestions, Awesome American suggestions, I'm available at UBG Contact on Twitter, or I can also be found as Dave Milner or Agador, that's Aggedor, on Mublet, the Tea Party Community, Spreely, Minds, MeWe, or Gab. Now let's begin. Before I play this, brother, and it is a good thing to make a comparison there, because the lefties are touting this poor kid. They gave her center stage at the United Nations and everything, and all they want to do. Yeah, and all that. Well, hey, that's what the left do, and what all they want to do with Sophia is to shut her down, to ban her off YouTube, to shut her up, because this is something, Jeff. You and I understand this because both of us grew up around some mugs and some thugs. Okay, the last thing a bully wants is to have people make fun of him, and that's exactly what the left is. They're the biggest bullies there are. And they can't stand anybody making fun of them or their friends, which in this case, guys, when you hear this, just think of it this way. Sophia did this dressed in a burqa, all right? And that's part of the reason that YouTube banned it. Oh, yeah, man.
Oh, wow.
It'll completely come off, the meaning of it will, as soon as I start playing this. This is great stuff, guys. This is what true free speech and satire against the left and their friends sounds like. So, Jeff, if you're ready, we'll go ahead and roll this. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it, Dave.
All right. You guys are listening to the English Defense League radio show, and this is Soph from May the 14th of this year. Here we go.
Assalamu alaikum, my Muslim brothers and sisters. I come to you today to atone before Allah for my misdeeds against His people. I perpetrated grievous verbal abuse against the defenseless and entirely innocent people of Islam by very sincerely threatening nuclear genocide on the serious platform that is a Discord server. Little known fact, I was given permission by the United States government to do it. Not only did I have the codes, but the launch keys were in and the missiles were seconds away from being launched. All of a sudden, though, I received a flood of Twitter mentions telling me that the actions I described were morally wrong, a fact which I was completely oblivious to. In their sage wisdom, they proved irrefutably that my hatred was unjustified, assuring me that there is no meaningful correlation between Islam and the proliferation of rape gangs in Europe. Long story short, peer pressure succeeded in completely changing my mind, and the peacemaking spirit of John McCain inspired me to stop the nukes just in time. Since then, I've become a devout follower of the Prophet Muhammad. Suffice to say, I've been having a ton of fun. Of course, I get raped by my 40-year-old husband every so often, and I have to worship a black cube to indirectly please an ancient Canaanite god. But at least I get to go to San Fran and stone the shit out of some gays, and the cops can't do anything about it because California's a crypto caliphate. The only part of Islam I absolutely cannot get into is the anti-Jew stuff. Personally, I just can't support any sort of animosity towards Jews. I wouldn't want to be a Nazi now, would I? I assume most of you have noticed the policies surrounding hateful conduct on social media platforms, virtually tightening a muzzle on the head of anyone whose speech eludes the narrative. They're purging their user base, using pseudo-offenses as an excuse to squeeze out ideological dissent, and enforcing conformity into every internet community they can get their hands on. While the deplatforming can be partially chalked up to out-of-touch big tech CEOs who are just taking the path of least resistance, there certainly seems to be a coordinated effort coming from strident professional complainers who share an objective of removing reactionaries from all means of communication. Their job entails closely monitoring the posts of whatever online personalities they come across until one of them says something that's deemed unacceptable. When this happens, these fucking Reddit homos speed to the scene, fueled by their lust for character assassination. If you pay attention to the identity these people put on when they do this, you'll notice it's not their conscious selves, it's a sub-personality. And since they're essentially possessed, They tend to expose things about themselves without even noticing. Because of that, it's very obvious that their behavior has been shaped by years of being humiliated and socially rejected by women. I know that reading will elicit people to accuse me of armchair psychology, but ask yourself this. Why do they always speak like insufferable women? You see, I've had enough run-ins with these amoebas that I understand how they operate, and they never confront you directly. Instead, they default to saying things like, "This is not a good look." I know that sort of language immediately gets the blood boiling, but think about it. They're saying you look bad rather than saying you're wrong. The reason for that is that their objective is not to challenge your ideas, but to give you the feeling that a Stacy stare does. Because in their little pea brains, being a social outcast is the worst thing you can be. To put it bluntly, their whole MO is a post hoc projection. They imagine themselves to be the Stacy that rejected them years ago, and their intention is to make you feel how they felt, inadequate. For example, when they say something is not a good look, ask yourself, who does it look bad to? The purpose of that little phrase is to make you imagine that there's a group whose opinions you should care about, but don't fall for it. They're powerless little prions who spend all day on the computer scouring the internet for people to harass. And there's a reason why they always defer to groups, which fits neatly into my theory. Men, in general, tend more towards antisocial behaviors than women, which is why they're not afraid of confrontation or expressing themselves in an unpopular fashion. These spiritual manlets, however, are feminine, so they defer to groupthink for everything, and their method of attacking you is saying, "You're not popular in our group, therefore you should feel bad." However, this too folds, since unlike the Stacys, they don't actually have a group they belong to. And on top of that, it'd still be meaningless, since the truth is anti-democratic. Popularity is utterly irrelevant to what's true and what isn't. So no matter how much cool guy web slang they conjure up and lob at you, they're still evolutionary dead ends who can't think their way out of a paper bag. The worst thing you can do when met with these miserable creatures is compromise. These people are vampires of fear and hysteria. So if you maintain your position and refuse to comply with their demands, they'll become increasingly upset as time goes on. Don't ever allow yourself to be silenced. These nobodies will never amount to anything more than sock accounts on Twitter with numbers in their handle, whose most powerful weapon is canceling you. They can't potentially harm you. Now, I can think of various motivations that would drive someone to become such a lost man, whose only earthly aim is to enhance suffering. I mean, in a lot of cases, it's just an effort to virtue signal. But I think it's far too optimistic of a reading to think of all these guys as simply clueless SJWs. It seems to me that there exist people whose sole interest is to sow the seeds of discord, and possess an infatuation with increasing suffering, stress, and division wherever it may be found, for no particular reason. Think of it this way. If there are people who set out to do good just for the sake of good, there have to be people fixated on doing the exact opposite. The only other motivation I can imagine is reserved for the more aware parties, who foresee the outcome of heavy censorship and encourage it as a way to control the dialogue from entering certain undesirable areas. The most easily identifiable characters that fall into this category are the technological elite, aka the sociopathic 30-somethings that reside in the entrails of Silicon Valley.
I certainly find the selection deeply offensive. I know many of you do too. And it conflicts with many of our values. There's actually a lot of historical precedent for boredom being a huge factor in vote, and actually in building extremism, and that correlated highly with Trump's support.
Is this a relatively new arc, or is this the same arc that has included 2 world wars?
History teaches us that there are periods of populism, of nationalism that rise up, and that's all the reason we need to be in the arena. Make sure it doesn't turn into a world war or something catastrophic, but instead is a blip, is a hiccup.
Speaking to white men, there's an opportunity for you right now to understand your privilege in the society.
I lead this company without political bias and work to ensure that our products continue to operate that way.
The right gets 2.5 billion viewed recommendations a month. The center gets 2.5 billion, and the left gets 5.7 billion.
As a preface, we have to establish that when something happens like Chris Rock getting attacked for making fun of Jussie Smollett, It's all just inconsequential melodrama. Most cases of famous people getting exposed just end up getting memory holed by the common man. Because, despite what bourgeoisie bugmen will tell you, the common man recognizes that words are just words. You make of them what you want, and if you get offended, you chose to. People who live outside of faggoty microcosms reserve their concern for when unprovoked violence starts happening in the streets. Outside of that, they recognize that all of these controversies are merely glazed with an illusion of importance, and you can't take them seriously, ever. This is precisely why you need a higher standard of morality than what you've been socialized into tolerating. What is socially acceptable is radically inconsistent and ever-shifting. It's no coincidence that sectarianism is so prevalent among leftists. The only skill they've obtained mastery of is infighting and creating conflict over dumb, irrelevant shit. And in the cases when somebody says something that sounds bad that wasn't just a joke, it's because it wasn't meant for you. Words are tools, and one of their many uses is the articulation of inner turmoil, regardless of how unpleasant that may be. But some people like pretending that that's not the case and that every word a person utters is an official statement. Years ago, when the politicization of the internet had just begun, the people dedicated to patrolling the internet were noticeably fringe and disorganized. Now, they're a defined enclave, uniformly striving towards scaring others into considering free speech as a conditional concept. How did they achieve this? Fear. By employing the artificial boogeyman of virtual social rejection, they successfully synthesize fear. The more that people become sensitive to the dopamine of retweets and likes, the more they're sensitive to getting ratioed. So when they hit the brick wall of getting called a Nazi or a sexist, they feel as if their lives have ended.
There you go. Welcome back to the English Defense League radio show with your host, Jeff Spider Mitchell. That's right. So, Jeff, what do you think about the first part of that?
Yeah, always interesting. Very clued up young lady and common sense lady. I've got to admit, I like the satire involved in what she does as well. And the thing about it is, everything she said is true. It's not just rubbish. It's not fake. Like we see the opposite, the opposite side of the aisle try to do. Very interesting, Dave. In between, my apologies because I was just engaging with a cup of tea. I was still out of breath because I rushed back because I knew it was coming to the end of the clip. So, but no, it was very enlightening, and of course, I hope our listeners enjoyed. That's the first part, correct, Dave? That's the point that stuck in what was being said, and she's so precise, Dave. So there you go. Well done, Sophia. God bless you, love.
Well, and again, Jeff, there's so much good here, especially when she talks about free speech, the thing that she really believes in passionately. One of the things that strikes me is that she basically says that if someone is offended by a certain thing that's said or whatever, they need to understand that it might not be meant for them. Now, a good example of that, Jeff, I like watching that old show, Law and Order, that ran for about 20 years here in the United States, and they're now showing, big reams of that show on here. Now, in one of their movies, they illustrated this point very well. This lady who had her sister murdered went down to the police station and overheard some of the other policemen joking about the death of a hooker and that kind of thing, and using that humor that is a release often for law enforcement officers. Okay, but she took it the wrong way completely and said, "Oh, well, this is the insensitivity. This is what you're all about." And as that scene ended, I was thinking to myself, no, that's not speech that was meant for the relative of a victim of a crime. That is the kind of we used to call it black humor that you see in police departments, in the military, things of that nature, because those guys, especially homicide detectives in a big city, those guys wind up seeing so much death and so many people who are slain, who, honestly didn't deserve it. I mean, no one deserves to have that happen. That they can do only a few things. They can either find an outlet for their rage at this injustice to other human beings. They can find that outlet by telling jokes, which is, in my opinion, the least harmful way of finding that outlet. Or they can go crazy and just start nailing suspects or people they just don't like, or themselves. So it's the jokes are crass, yes. They're insensitive, yes, but they're necessary in order for these people who protect us to keep their sanity. And now, of course, Jeff, I was talking about a TV movie there, but that also works in reality. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Go ahead.
What you said about dark humour, it's quite obvious, and I always take it back to the English, as I say, the Tommies in the trenches, and there was bombs exploding around them. This, that, and the other. You know what? Them guys will sit around. They'll say a few things, and they're crack jokes, because that's the humour. Even as dark as death around you, and there was people playing dead, this, that, and the other, but the sense of humour pulled them through. This is it. I mean, the left can't quite understand and grasp, but some of us are put in their predicaments where all around you is despair. It's what gets you through. It keeps you sanity. It's dark humour, whether they like it or not. It's reality. Yeah. That's what you said. Reality.
Well,
and that's how I would explain to the listeners that this has always been a tradition with people like myself and other people out there. It's sometimes your humour comes through, even though it's inappropriate times. Unfortunately, that's the reality of life. It's sometimes it just, to crack on and crack a few jokes gets you through some of the hardest times that you might have in your life. And it has done with me, and it's done with maybe many soldiers, many military, and same as it was then, same as it is now. There you go, Dave.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, and you see it also in the medical community and in any high-stress occupation where life and death decisions have to be made, and people see things like children dying and stuff like that. And, this is, as you say, Jeff, the left may be offended by this, but as much as the left likes to try and talk about how they're all scientific and everything, and they believe in science and reason, this is a psychological reality that they refuse to grasp because it doesn't go along with political correctness, which they also view as science.
I would say that they've gone as far as the opposite side you possibly can, especially with AOC at one of her rallies, and you had one of her supporters saying, "Eat babies, save the climate, eat babies." Come on, man. How desperate and evil can you get from the left side of things now? And AOC was nodding her head. This is what we've got now, Dave. And I just want to bring, because that's still so much in my mind, what's been going on. I cannot. There's other things that eat dead people. Things like, Dave, what is going on? Are they totally deranged? Have their minds gone? Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, it's got to be said. They're totally messed up, these people.
Well, it's part of what our society has created, and part of the societal norms that Soph was talking about. What is allowed, what is now considered moral. Say in New York State, it's considered moral if a woman is right at the point where she's going to have a baby, to abort it. In other words, kill it if she feels that her family is going to be dishonored by its birth or something of that nature. That's what is considered moral in our earthly society now, and it can only perpetuate if we as individuals do not make the conscious decision to have real morals, not the morals that are foisted upon us by society, but the morals that we learn from God, from family, from love of our families and our friends, and and move on from that point. But
I think this is what we've just been discussing is so important. That this is how far that we've come. That we are having people standing on stages while their supporters are saying, "Kill 8 babies." That stopped climate change, etc. And another one saying, "Oh, let's just eat dead people." I mean, I just don't get it. I really don't understand. There is no logic whatsoever behind the left now. They're totally gone right out the window. I mean, we knew they'd been gone for a long time, but we didn't realise how desperate and evil these people really are. They're showing their true colours nowadays. They're out there. They're out there. You know, and that's what we're up against, ladies and gentlemen. I think we've all got our, our moral compasses, but, and of course someone's got a broad, moral compass, whatever you might call it. But when you have people talking about that, about doing something to a little baby, think about it. Think about it common sensely. It just blows my mind, Dave, and I would think it would blow everybody else's mind that's listening to our broadcast tonight of what this is what they're saying. And AOC standing, looking, nodding her head, agreeing basically. Didn't really comment, but just nodded her head quietly in improvement with what this woman was saying. Unbelievable, mate. I'm sorry. I couldn't get that picture out of my head with her. AOC got me more than anything. I could hear what this woman was saying. But AOC nodding her head like one of these, these dogs in the back of the car as you drive along, nodding its head. She reminded me just of that, with dark intent, absolutely dark intent. Unbelievable, Dave.
Well, I got to tell you, Jeff, that's what you get when you replace God with secular morality. I can't think of any other thing to call it, but that's what you get when you replace God. Well, you can call it that. Yeah, I mean that's at its base. But I say secular morality because that includes Satanism and everything else, even whether they know it or not. When you get to a point where you can say, let's eat babies to avert climate change, then there's something seriously morally wrong with you. But Jeff, I'm wondering, it's getting just about 2 minutes to the time for you to call back in. If you want to call back in, before we run part 2 of this, I can run the SHR Media promos here, and we can have that, and you come back and we'll run part 2 about this thing.
I'll run to the time. I've got a few minutes still spare. Dave, what I'll do is in between our segments, what we're about to do, I will drop off as it hits that magic time for me that I normally call back. It just makes it more, it makes it easy so I can listen what's going on, and then I can just fade out and come back in. Yeah, Dave.
No worries. No worries, Jeff. I tell you what, I'll go ahead and play these SHR Media promos. They're about 3.5 minutes long. So if you want to call in, during them, you've heard them. So you'll have that option. Then we'll hit part 2 of this. Now, people, I just want you to know that the English Defense League radio show and the Unpleasant Blind Guy were 2 separate shows and still are, but it's also being played on the Unpleasant Blind Guy. What you're hearing now will be played on the Unpleasant Blind Guy page at Spreaker.com.
We're one big family, ladies and gentlemen. We're one big family, aren't we, Dave?
That will also be played on the SHR Media YouTube channel, and it will be played over, and some of it at least will be played over the Western Free Radio Network. All right, my show times for the repeats of this show, which are in more or less little 30-minute bites that are easy to handle, are 1 p.m. Eastern time in the United States, and that's 6 p.m. In the UK on Monday through Friday, and on Saturday at midnight Eastern in the United States, and 5 a.m. in the UK. And for those of you who are listening to this program at the Unpleasant Blind Guy page at Spreaker.com, the English Defense League radio show is podcast live on Thursdays and Sundays at 8:30 p.m. in the UK, and that's 3:30 p.m. Eastern in the United States. As Jeff says, we're one big happy family, and we may be even becoming a bigger family with TECN pretty soon. It's onward and upward, and guys, these are some promos for some other great programs that are on the SHR Media Network. And if you want to hear these, we're going to run them right now. This will be in about 3.5 minutes long. You're listening to the English Defense League radio show.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunnett. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunnett.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the English Defense League radio show with your host, Jeff Spider Mitchell. Jeff.
Yeah, man.
A really good first half.
And then I'll call back in. But we've got a second part that Miss Brew's going to play of Sophia. That's correct. Sophia, isn't it? Sophia.
Well, she calls herself Soph on the net, but her real name is Sophia. Yeah, but her real name is Sophia. But still, we do have this second part of this. I mean, this is great social commentary, and as Jeff pointed out in the first half of the show, this is a young lady who. I've actually seen her in debate with lefties and winning just hands down. And listen, I suck at debate, But
common sense.
she is...
That's it, Dave. Common sense.
Yeah.
Stupid sense.
She uses... Well, yeah, she uses common sense when she's doing that. And one of the things, by the way, Jeff, that you'll be able to appreciate, and certainly I can, is she was debating with a lefty about quote unquote Islamophobia, and she brought up the point that Islam is not a race, because the lefty implied that she was a racist. I think this emerged from her being called a Nazi by this one lefty on YouTube, and of course the lefty said, "Oh that's you guys trot that out. Islam is not a race. Bleh, you're good." And it just acting like it was nothing.
It's true.
And,
it don't matter what lefty say. It's true, isn't it, Dave? It isn't.
It is. It is.
It isn't a race. Far from it. How dare they even sort of try to debate with you over it? It's logical. It's just an illogical argument they throw back at you. Nothing makes sense to them. But Dave, continue, brother. I'm going to have to take my break any second now.
Oh, okay, buddy. Yeah, go ahead, and I'll just tell the listeners. And what happened with the end of it, was Soph answered him and said, "Well, do you have any other argument other than just an insult?" And the guy didn't have any other argument. She really took care of business with this. So this is a young lady that is very intelligent, and she uses satire to get her points across mostly about free speech, but she has the truths that she will tell about things that she wants to tell those truths about. And sadly, the left doesn't want to hear those truths, and they're doing everything they can to try and erase her from the internet and try and make things as difficult for her as possible, while they bring out this poor Greta puppet from Sweden and make her this kind of poster child for global warming, which is pretty sick. Okay, but there's no comparison between the two.
And that is it for this time. Next time, Part 3. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for listening, and may your God go with you. Goodbye. The Unpleasant Blind Guy is copyright 2019. Anno Domini.